The day my life derailed, I was sitting cross-legged on the floor of my childhood bedroom in East London, scrolling through what I thought would be muted applause for the violin I had posted on Instagram. Instead, the comments swarmed like wasps. First came the neighbors, then relatives, a cousin's snide emoji, the local shopkeepers, stick to your day job, mate, complete with a screenshot in the family group chat. People I hardly knew tagged others, drawn in by the mix of pity and cruel delight. Local boy thinks he's Stradivari, they said. Hundreds of likes, then thousands, viral for all the wrong reasons. A short video someone filmed during my AV Club presentation in sixth form, where I'd stutteringly tried to share my half-finished viola, surfaced and became a meme. My face, mouth open, chin acne and all, plastered under captions like, "When you think gluing wood together is a career." It was everywhere. I kept the phone on the windowsill while I sanded the belly of a new violin. The garden outside was bright with daffodils. The neighbors' children screamed in their plastic pool, but inside the air stank of shellac and shame. I shouldn't have looked at the notifications, but hope was a hard habit to kill. My mother called from the kitchen, "Zakia, your uncle says you've gone mad. Craftsman in this economy." I jammed the sandpaper under my knee. "I'm busy, Ma." I could hear her chopping onions, the scrape of the knife. "You think you're so clever. Show off on computer, put your education to use instead. What will you do with violins?" I'd heard it every day since I was 12, repairs and family dinners blending into a hissing chorus of waste of time and pipe dream. Later that week, my father's face appeared in my doorway, his voice soft, exhausted. "Come have tea with me in the back, we must talk, Beta." He placed a big hand on my shoulder and squeezed just once, as if to remind me the world was hard enough already. We sat in the threadbare lawn chairs, cradling chipped mugs. "Zakia," he said, "your hands, your mind, you could fix anything as a child, but this is not a life, not here, people are laughing." His gaze drifted to the neighbor's roof, unable to meet mine. "Sometimes we must accept limits." The hurt I felt wasn't loud, it was slow, tiny bites from 1,000 insects beneath the skin. Dignity is silent like that, surviving by going underground. I stared past the cracked paving stones, thinking if I spoke the dam would break. Instead, I nodded. "Yes, Baba," I kept my voice even. Inside, the humiliation circled like a hawk. That was the summer before I fled. I took my battered toolkit and one unfinished violin, catching the midnight bus to a friend's flat in South London. I washed pub dishes for cash, falling asleep to the oily chime of cutlery, and built in the corners of borrowed rooms. On my rare free nights, I sat on the banks of the Thames, feeling the city breathe, lonely trains rumbling over wet rails, the sour sweep of cigarette smoke, the grey chill of London after midnight. In the dark, the doubts clawed at me. What if everyone was right? Was I doomed to lose myself in a dead dream, splinters and varnish for company? Still, I couldn't give it up. Even in shame, I wanted the work. I wanted to be more than a punchline. I saved every coin I could, anonymous hours stacking plates, long walks home in rain. When I had enough, I joined community woodworking classes. The old men there barely spoke, but they watched my hands and sometimes nodded. That meant more than any applause I'd known, but the city was a furnace. Every post online, every query about repairs drew new jeers from old acquaintances. "How's the firewood business?" Sad-faced emojis, screenshots in the family group chat, a burning shame in my gut each time I opened my phone. I stopped posting, I barely called home, my voice always caught between anger and the raw wish to be understood. Every so often, my mother's voice crackled through WhatsApp. "Still making toys?" The loneliness worked underground, rooting into something tougher. I built without sharing, trusting only the wood and the slow patience of my craft. Hours dissolved in the hum of hand tools, spokeshave rasping, ribs glued, hide glue cooling. The world dwindled to wood grain, arch, scroll. By month's end, I had an instrument that sang, if only meekly. I started approaching instrument shops, mostly to be turned away by overworked clerks. "Our clients don't want this, sorry." Once an older woman in Camden cradled my violin for a minute too long. She played a G scale, then set it aside. "You want to be a luthier in London?" Her laugh was not unkind. "Go to Italy, love, you're young enough to dream there." But I couldn't afford Italy, and there was nowhere left to run. In the pit of that hollow year, I landed a job sorting busted string instruments for a repair shop in King's Cross. It didn't pay much, but the manager let me stay after hours. I swept the floors and wiped down cellos, oily fingerprints smearing the varnish in streaks of iridescent color. Some nights he'd find me carving pegs or sanding a fingerboard. "Why do you work so hard, kid?" He fiddled with his wire-rimmed glasses, weighing my answer. I couldn't tell him the truth, that I was arming myself against the laughter. Instead I said, "It's all I want." He snorted but didn't fire me. The break came by accident. A scruffy violinist, a busker who set up near Charing Cross, brought in a battered violin for repairs. The scroll snapped at the pegbox. The ribs were loose. "It's my only one," she said, half apologetic. "No cash, but I can promise a song." I worked late, re-gluing, patching, trying things I'd only read about. It wasn't perfect, but when she played it outside the shop that Friday, the sound blossomed over the rush-hour crowd, clear golden with a sweetness I'd never heard from my hands before. Passers-by lingered. Someone filmed it and put it online, not knowing it was my work. The next morning, the shop's inbox was flooded with inquiries. Who fixed it? Who made it? The owner cornered me. "This was you, wasn't it?" His tone wasn't mocking. It was surprised. I felt seen and terrified. He gave me a bench in the back, paid me to repair, sometimes to build. I still lived poor beans on toast, drafty rooms, second-hand everything, but now I had a corner of the world where my hands mattered. Letters trickled in from musicians, local and then not so local. Some asked for minor repair, one wanted a custom viola. A small-time string quartet asked for 2 fiddles and a cello, something English this time if you please. The instrument sold, and my name slowly, quietly, began to matter in circles I'd never dreamed of. Still, I stayed quiet. I didn't call home. My mother's birthday came and went. My cousins finished degrees and bought cars. I worked, I saved. The city was less cruel now, but the shame left marks, ridged, invisible, but there. When my father's health faltered, I could no longer avoid returning. That spring, I packed 3 of my best pieces, a marbled maple violin, a long-bodied dark viola, and a cello I'd spent all winter on, into a battered case and took the early train east. The fog peeled from the Thames, yellow streetlights blinking out, a city uncurling to morning. I felt sick, afraid of old mockery of eyes rolling in disappointment. My father's face was thinner, cheeks sunken, but his hands were as strong as ever when we met at the station. He didn't mention my absence. We walked the old streets past the corner where I'd first scavenged broken wood from a skip, each shopfront, each gate rung with memory. I saw the neighbor, Mrs. Alam, peering at us through her kitchen window as we walked past. At home, my mother fussed over lunch, sighing at my hair, my once-proud hands dry and stained. The room filled with relatives as word spread that I was back, my uncle, aunties, cousins grown tall while I was away. I caught sidelong glances, whispers. No one mentioned my work outright. That evening, as the sun cut low across the terrace, my father looked up from the tea his sister had poured. "Zakia brought something with him," he announced. His voice was tired but carried weight. "He wants to show us." For a moment, silence smothered the room. My mother shook her head. "Let the boy rest, no more showing off." But my father insisted, looking at me not with hope, but with a dignity I suddenly recognized in the way his voice quieted the room. Reluctantly, I opened the battered violin case on the kitchen table. My fingers shook as I lifted the first violin, a golden-brown varnish-flamed maple back, the light catching the subtle arch of the belly. I placed it next to the viola and the cello, setting out the bows, the polished pegs gleaming. My uncle's eyebrows rose, laughed a bit at the edge of his lips. "Everyone can buy a violin now, Amazon and all that," he said to the room. "You spent years for this." I forced myself to meet his eyes. That old raw pain surged, but I raised my chin. "Try it," I said to my cousin Aisha, who'd played music in school. She hesitated, looking at her mother, who shrugged. The room pressed closer, the air thick with skepticism. Aisha lifted the violin. I showed her how to hold it, fingers light, not pinching the neck. She drew the bow across the open strings, then settled into a scale, rusty but determined. The house grew quiet as the note shimmered, far purer than the plastic school violins we'd grown up with. She played a slow melody, one I recognized from childhood Eid parties, the old folk tune my father loved. Each note filled the cramped kitchen, sliding between table coats, ceramic plates. The sound was warm, round, alive in a way even I hadn't anticipated. My mother, arms folded, looked up mid-frown, mouth ajar. My uncle stepped closer, plucking the strings, peering at the grain. "Not bad," he conceded, tone uncertain. I drew out certificates, workshop apprenticeships, and a review from a London quartet, the faces of their members in glossy colour, my name in the credits. I showed the stamped bridge under the cello's tailpiece. "Zakia Yusuf, London 2021. Real musicians buy your work?" my cousin asked, disbelief crumbling to awe. I nodded, throat tight. "They do." There's a waiting list now. My father leaned forward, reaching for the cello. Show me how to play this one. I helped him sit, steadied his thick fingers on the bow. He drew it slow across the C string, a low vibration filling the floor. The others fell silent. My mother dabbed her eyes, quickly grumbling at the dust. Outside, the neighbor kids pressed their faces to the window, curious about the sudden concert. Mrs. Alam appeared at the door, bold now, as if the family's eyes might confirm her own suspicions. The shopkeeper from the corner, drawn by the music, poked his head in. I saw recognition bloom as he took in the violin, the case, the bow. "Aren't you the boy from the internet, from the video years ago?" he said, half smiling. My uncle laughed, not sharp but new, unsure what side of history he now stood on. "He's not a joke now, is he?" Aisha played again, then handed the violins smoothly to my mother. "Go on, Ami, you always said you wanted music at home." Everyone waited. My mother hesitated but finally pressed the instrument to her chin. She played a few hesitant notes, the bow scratchy. The clumsy attempt did nothing to dull the magic. The instrument, even mishandled, filled the room with a thick, honest beauty. The mockery in the room had nowhere left to go, it dissolved. My father set the cello back in its case. He clasped my shoulder, gripping tight. "You built these." I said yes, soft but strong. We sat together long after dusk. The family's rhythm changed. Relatives argued softly, but now I was included. My uncle, always the loudest, leaned in after tea. "How much?" he asked, half a joke. "Maybe I order for my boy in Leeds." I smiled, knowing he meant it. As the night deepened, I went to the back garden where the city's hush pressed close but friendly. The air was thick with honeysuckle. Even the distant thrum of cars sounded softened, less hostile. My father joined me, blanket over his knees. "I'm sorry we did not believe in your hands. Sometimes we want to protect, but we only know our own paths." I shook my head. "It's all right, I needed the fight, I think." He nodded, watching the moths flutter under the back porch light. "You came back, Beta, not everyone does. The dream brought you home, and home is better for it." Inside, my violin and cello rested on the kitchen table, proof that what I'd built with patience and pain mattered not just elsewhere, not just outside this community or that cruel moment, but here, in the heart of the place I'd left. Tomorrow, the neighbors would gossip anew, but now the ridicule would have to find someone else. They'd seen what my hands could do, and it had changed them, just as it had changed me. Days passed before my train back to the city. I walked the old routes, by the school where I'd first glued splinters, past the shops where I'd scoured scrap. In every face was something gentler, a measured nod or shy wave. The shopkeeper called out as I passed, "Good luck, maestro," not mocking, respect, rough and real. As the train rumbled back west, city opening up beneath a grey sky, I pressed my hands together on the battered case by my knee and stared through the window at the world that had once shrunk so small. Against the pane of glass, my reflection rippled in the morning light, not as a joke, but as all I'd ever wanted to be. Zakia, builder of instruments, dignity laid bare, carried home and out again, ready for whatever music might come.